Welcome back to the Unconditional Gooner Podcast. You are joined by me, the Unconditional Gooner, aka Dan, and we are also joined by our resident co-host, Mr. Badji, also known as Neil. Today, not only playing the impartial observer, but also a Villa fan.
Villa follower. I wouldn't say Villa fan, but Villa follower. Villa fan when I was a kid, purely because living in Reading, everyone supported a London team or Man United. And I went to Reading games and, are you a Reading supporter? Well, I've got nothing to talk about if I am, have I? And to be fair, the first ever live game I saw was Villa beat Everton 6-2 a long, long time ago. So it kind of went from there. And as you get older and you move to Norwich and that rivalry with Villa's not there, then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, hold on a minute. I can now legitimately go back to being a proper Reading fan. So, Villa follower, 100%. Haven't been to a game for quite a long time, but I'm always intrigued and will try and watch as many of their matches as possible. So fingers crossed, my knowledge and my opinion will hold some degree of weight. Not sway.
Your opinion doesn't matter, Neil. Let's be honest. We're just
that's true.
Yeah, we're just here to learn your footballing insights. But no, that's great. So today what we're going to be doing is reacting to the Man City game. I've had a couple of days to calm down and pick myself up and reflect. So we're going to be talking and reacting to that. Obviously, Neil, as the kind of the impartial expert here. Then we're going to be looking a little bit at Aston Villa, so analysing their season so far, how they set themselves up. Obviously, we've got a former Arsenal manager over at Villa now, so that's going to be an interesting battle, which will then take us on to the final section, talking about that game, looking at the team news, and we'll be making some predictions. And it's fair to say that none of our predictions have been very well. They're not come through at all, have they, so far?
Well, annoyingly though, last week, and I sent you the message again. But last week, obviously the Brighton game, we had Goofy George Jack on saying he thought Arsenal would win, but he was hoping and praying for a 1-1 draw. I said 2-1 Arsenal. I said Trossard to score, and I said Tony to score. And then Saka let me down. So I was so close. Had Saka scored, I probably would have been more upset that I didn't put a bet on it. But apart from that, our general opinion of what's going to happen has been absolutely awful.
Yeah. I mean, we're not pitching ourselves as experts. We're just football fans, football lovers, and we have opinions. That's why we're here to talk about it. So let's quickly chat about that Brentford game. It was more drop points from Arsenal. It certainly put pressure on them going into the game against Man City. There's obviously been lots of controversy come out of that Brentford game as well. Yeah. And Arteta was fuming, to say the least. But as an impartial observer, what did you make of the game against Brentford, firstly?
Let's be fair, it was exactly as we said it would be. Arsenal dominated a lot of the possession, but Brentford hassled, harried, chased, worked hard, almost in a similar vein to Everton the week before. Jack was on talking about it. He named what he thought would be the starting 11. It was exactly the starting 11 that Thomas Frank went with changes. So it wasn't like Jack was just going, it'll be the same as last week because we got an all right result. It was a changed formation, a changed setup, and Jack was bang on with it. But how do I think? I mean, Arsenal missed a number of chances, but then so did Brentford. Ivan Toney missed a couple. I mean, he hit the bar when you'd probably have money on him to score. He dragged one wide from the edge of the area when you would have thought he may score. There were chances for both teams. The controversy, I think, Arteta was very frustrated about an offside, a block, things like that within the goal or the lead up to the goal for Brentford. He was wrong in the points of play that he was talking about when someone was offside, but someone was still offside in that goal lead up. And the problem was, and I was watching a segment by former Premier League referee Dermot Gallagher.
Yeah,
and he was talking about it, and it's the reason that the current referee Lee Mason has been taken off VAR duties for a period of time. I think if that's the case, he should be probably taken off of refereeing duties as well. I don't know if that's been announced, but Dermot Gallagher was like, it's almost like he felt he'd spent so long analysing one segment that he just agreed it. And actually, the next phase of play, Norsgaard is offside as he cuts that ball back across for Tony to nod in. And so it's a disallowed goal. It should have been disallowed. VAR again has heavily. Well, no, VAR hasn't let down. The system hasn't let down. One of the referees has still made the error. The whole point of VAR is that there are not errors made. He'd spent 3 minutes analysing something. He'd made a decision. Watch it through to the end of the build-up for the extra 15 seconds and say, yes, it's good to go. He didn't. Goal was given. Arsenal are very annoyed. Arteta is very annoyed. Arsenal should have won the game before that.
So I was watching the game. So I'm in Lisbon. I'm in Portugal at the moment. So I watched the game illegally in order to hear English commentary. I shouldn't say that. I
mean, you can edit this, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to edit that one out. Don't worry. No, but so every now and then, like I watch like American commentary, which is always English commentators actually.
Yeah.
But the whatever stream I was watching, they didn't even notice. They weren't even talking about the actual offside because they didn't even notice. Mm-hmm. And I think the producers weren't focusing on that when it comes to showing that on the TV. And I just wonder whether, it was just forgotten. It was just like, was that first act of play offside or not? No, it wasn't. And therefore that was a decision. They've obviously just missed that second part. But I think on reflection, if you were to look at the game as a whole, a draw is a fair result. I think you're right. Brentford had a lot of chances, which if they were more prolific, they could have won the game. At the same time, 24 hours after and reflecting on that game, I felt very frustrated because even though Arsenal didn't play to their potential, it was a game where they should have actually won it because the offside goal. And they're the type of games that win championships. You see Liverpool do it. You see Manchester City do it over the years. Yeah. They don't play well, but they get the result. And it's another situation where Arsenal have been potentially robbed of the points. And it wasn't the only VAR incident that weekend. There's been lots. We could talk quite a lot about VAR, but I think on reflection, it was a fair result, even though I do still think Arsenal were robbed of that win. And that probably it definitely played some kind of psychological role in terms of the City game. Arsenal, it might have actually fired Arsenal up, and that was what Arteta was going for. He wanted to fire up the team to say, look, we've been robbed of these 2 points. Let's go and make sure it doesn't impact us. Ultimately, did it fire the team up? I don't know. I think there was certainly nerves going into the City game, and we could see that in the way that the game played out in the end.
Yeah.
But tell us, what did you make? We both predicted a 1-1 for the Man City game as well, I believe, right?
Yeah, 1-1. We both predicted a draw. I may have gone with a 2-2. It could have been 1-1. What I made of the Man City game was Man City were not at their best, and they punished Arsenal. That's essentially what happened. I mean, Man City, it was, I think, the lowest possession had by a Manchester City team since Pep has been in charge. I think it was like 36%, something like that. There we go. 36.5% possession, the lowest possession they've had. But there are the telling stats. 10 shots, 1 on target for Arsenal. 9 shots, 6 on target for City. And do you know what? Has Eddie Nketiah's bubble burst a little bit? He missed a couple of very good chances. The free header, that's not even on target. There was a shot as well that he did he blaze over? I think he blazed over, dragged wide. I remember seeing someone blaze over. But it just seems as though that little bit of luck that was coming his way early doors, and everyone was like, do you know what? This may not be a hideous option. Everyone is now saying, please, God, get Jesus back.
No, you said it the other week. Nketiah, you feel, is not an international class striker. And no. I think we've seen that. I think if we, to be fair, I'm not even sure Jesus would have taken some of those chances, because I also feel like Jesus is not super prolific.
No,
he does tend to miss a lot. However, he brings something very different to the team. But yeah. I agree. I think Nketiah has, along with a number of other players, actually, and it might be as a result of that, there's a number of players dipping in terms of form. I've talked about Martinelli a lot. I still think Trossard probably should have started that City game.
Yeah,
I think Odegaard's been he's been played out of the game by the opposition since the Everton match. I would say he's not been in full flow. I think Xhaka is also tailing off in terms of form at the moment. So I think between a number of the Arsenal players, there's a stat, actually, I think I might have it here. In terms of starting 11 changes, Arsenal play the same team week in, week out. They're tired. Arteta needed to rotate. Turns out the player that he did rotate, Tomiyasu, and I've been calling for it for a couple of weeks. He was
unfortunate.
He didn't cope well, especially in the first half. He wasn't in sync with Saka. He held onto the ball for too long. His passing was a bit awry. That pass back obviously contributed to the first goal. But I think Arteta probably made a mistake in not rotating the team a little bit against Brentford to get some fresh legs in preparation for the City game. We've been too reliant on the same players week in, week out, and that's starting to show.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the Tomiyasu, the goal, I mean, you watch it back and it's a back pass, but he looks like he's completely miskicked it.
Yeah.
But what an unbelievably good finish from Kevin De Bruyne.
It was almost off his shin as well. It wasn't
but the finish is kind of like he's bent it up and over Ramsdale, and it's bounced just inside the post. I mean, I would say from that position, Tomiyasu does that, and in most games, Ramsdale has cleared that ball. But against Man City, you're getting punished. And so it was proven, and I would say probably 5 out of 10 times, De Bruyne's not finishing it like that. The shot is going, because it's so rushed, it's hitting Ramsdale. It's going to bounce off the post. It's going to bounce just wide. He's going to catch it too much and it's going to go over. It's an unbelievably good finish. So, yes, Tomiyasu's made the mistake. But that mistake half of the time doesn't add, well, more than half the time, doesn't equate to a goal. But yeah, you're right. He didn't deal well. He was then really unlucky with the Jack Grealish goal. He kind of left Grealish. He got dragged inside too much. And then as he chased across to try and make the block, it comes off of the underside of his thigh. Wrong foot's Ramsdale to a bit. I mean, it bounces then up and over Ramsdale's arm.
Yeah, the ball manages to evade Ramsdale's. Ramsdale would have got it if that deflection. I'm pretty sure he would have got it. I haven't had a too close look at it.
It's very close to his arm, and it looks as though it's gone over his arm as opposed to wide of him. So it's not taking it away from him. It's lifted it over. And obviously, if you're diving down, trying to then get back up or trying to get an arm back up is pretty tricky. So he didn't cover himself in glory. But I've said numerous times that I think Tommy Asu is one of those players who is a bit like a Ben White. He's a wide centre-back who can play at right-back. And I think that was proved with the Jack Grealish goal. He gets dragged so far inside that he's left Grealish. Grealish is still on the edge of the box on his own for a few minutes because Tommy Asu's gone narrow. So when it comes back out, Grealish has got all of that time to get that shot off. But
it was well worked by City in the end because
it was.
And I think that proved to be the difference. I think composure in front of goal.
Yep.
You talked about Nketiah's missed chances. There's been a clip going around on Twitter whereby Nketiah blazed a shot high and wide, whereas if he had the composure to look left, Martinelli was free and would have had a tap in if he had found it wouldn't have been an easy pass, but if he had found the pass, it would have been a goal. And I think that was the difference in the end. I think form and composure in the final third.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what you can see here from these stats is that City had to change their game.
Yeah.
They took the lead, and then Arsenal played a very good first half and managed to get back into it through a penalty, which some might argue was soft. But I'm taking the penalty. I don't care. But ultimately, I think Pep gave Arteta and Arsenal, it paid them a lot of respect in the way that he chose his team, or he changed his team, let's say.
Yeah.
And it could have gone very badly. Especially when you think about kind of Silva in the left back position up against Saka. He had to change things and bring Aki over to kind of deal with Saka. And there were points in which they were kind of rotating between the three of them in order to who's going to foul Saka next.
Yeah.
But I think what Man City did was they changed, they tried something new. Whereas Arteta and Arsenal, they did the same thing. They just kind of rotated in the two players. We haven't talked about Partey being injured. I think Jorginho is actually one of Arsenal's best players, if not the best player on the pitch. So
yeah,
I don't
think one off the line as well, didn't he? So
yeah, I don't think we lost too much from Partey because I thought he was really good. No. But what we did see is Haaland be a big part of the game, which he's not been for the last few weeks. Tottenham completely stopped him from playing or from touching the ball. I think Arsenal perhaps were a bit naive in how they dealt with Haaland. He had a lot of touches and he played a very good game. And the other player we talked about was De Bruyne. Really good game, great finish for the first goal, and
assist for Haaland,
ultimately, I think their big players showed up, whereas Arsenal's, apart from Saka, who did well for the penalty and generally did better than any other attacking player. I think Arsenal, if you look at it, if you take a step back, they didn't really have the individual performances that Man City did.
No.
I think you could look at Jorginho and Saka as the two standouts for Arsenal, if anything.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the prime difference was shown in that game with the difference of having a world-class forward and not. You've got Erling Haaland, who 6'3", 6'4", ball can go up to him. He can hold it. He'll bring others into play. He links the play. The goal he scored, someone said to me, it's a scruffy finish. It's come across to him. He's taken it out of his feet and hit it so quickly across goal. He's leaning into it, but he's managed to take that touch, which isn't the best touch. It's out of his feet. But if Arsenal were on that, someone's stepping in and it's a block. But he's reacted so quickly to get that ball across the goal and past Ramsdale. And I think this is part of the problem. Haaland hasn't been missing chances. He's been out of the game. And Ketcher, because he can't do that link-up play very well, he can't hold the ball up. He sees his true value in that Arsenal team as someone to get the goals. And when he's not getting the goals, there's no value. So when you said about the chance where it's an easy square to Martinelli, in his head, yes, link the play, give it to Martinelli. That's what Jesus would do. I need to do something different.
I don't think he saw Martinelli. I don't know if he heard him, because
I don't think he would have passed it anyway. I think his natural instinct is to get the shot off and get a goal. And he's a finisher. That's what Nketiah is, an out-and-out old-school poacher finisher. But at the moment, it's not coming off because Arsenal aren't playing in a way that's going to work for that. And the more time he goes without the goal, the more he's going to be putting in to get those shots off and try and get a goal.
Yeah. I think let's have a look at the chalkboard. I just want to look at those because Nketiah did have some chances, right?
Yep.
Shots here. Here we go. Deselect, and then we go Nketiah. 4 chances.
Yeah.
All in pretty good positions, I would say. Mm-hmm. Look, these ones here, a couple of them headers. This one is the one where he blazed, where he could have squared to Martinelli, who would have been in for an easy finish.
And the worry is from there, as you've highlighted there, he's looking across at where Martinelli is. There's no way Nketiah can't see him. And if he doesn't see him, then that's a complete lack of awareness from Nketiah's point of view. Because he's looking, there's no peripheral vision. In his peripheral vision, worst case scenario, he sees a red shirt. But he's lashed at the shot. But as you said, the problem is 4 shots, Arsenal had 1 on target. And it wasn't from him. It was the penalty.
Yeah. I think ultimately where City won it was the high press. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about that, but what we've seen is that City were trying to make tackles high up the field, making interceptions high up the field, whereas Arsenal weren't really intercepting in the City half at all.
No.
And that they were pressing with 4 players very high up, and it caused mistakes ultimately, and that's where Arsenal lost the game. They lost possession in their own half too often. You can see it here, whereas City not so often. Four lost possessions here. Yeah. But ultimately, there were 2 big errors as well from Arsenal, and it was forced upon them. City forced those errors, I would say, and ultimately played a really good game, even though it was a completely different to their usual style. Pep looked at it. He knew what Arsenal were going to do. He changed things. He accepted that they were not going to have possession. I said wow. Accepted they're not going to have possession, but then played to that and forced those errors, which ultimately led to the Grealish goal.
Yeah.
And once once Arsenal were 2-1 down with, 72 minutes gone,
Yeah.
they were going to have to go at it. And ultimately, 10 minutes later, Haaland gets that chance, which was very unorthodox of a finish. But as you say, he gets that chance, he puts it away. And I think ultimately it's a big sucker punch for Arsenal and Arteta.
Yeah.
However, we are top of the league with a game in hand. Joint top of the league with a game in hand.
With a game in hand, yeah. Yeah.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all doom and gloom. It's still there. Arsenal have got to go back now in April, end of April, go to Etihad for the return fixture. It'll be interesting to see how the league table looks at that point in time. Obviously, by then, Man City will have hoped to have gone deeper in the Champions League. Arsenal will be hoping Man City have gone deeper in the Champions League, because if Man City are out of the Champions League, they are going to be going hell for leather to win the league again. So from Arsenal's point of view, Man City winning and qualifying, going through the next round is key. Jesus will be back. The biggest concern at the moment is Arsenal pretty much have a fully fit squad to pick from, and they have had for a period of time. Partey, Jesus, the only two missing, and Partey's only been out for like the last game. And they're trying to get him fit for the Villa game. I'll be honest, I wouldn't bother. Because if you're trying to get him fit, that means he's not fully fit. But after that, there's not a drastic switch around in that Arsenal team. There's not huge amounts of people that have been you're waiting for them to come back from injuries and things like that. So Man City are getting stronger. That's the big concern for me at the moment from an Arsenal point of view. Man City are getting players back, people coming back, not necessarily into form, but defensively, it's been a mishmash this season. There's no way they signed Manuel Kanji with the whole expectation of him being first choice centre-back this season. There's no way at the start of the season they were expecting Nathan Ake to be their first choice centre-back. But that's what's happened for a big chunk of the year. But now we saw Ruben Diaz back. I think Laporte was on the bench. You know, these guys are starting to come back in. They're starting to get fit again. Kyle Walker missed a big chunk at the start of the season. Bernardo Silva is now going to have listed on their Football Manager as left back as well. Competent. These things that...
I wouldn't go that far.
But Arsenal have got to make the next couple of weeks really count to keep themselves there. And you just live in hope. It's now no wins in the last 4. They've got to make sure they pick up a result this weekend against Villa.
Yeah, I think this is the concerning thing, as you say. Arsenal have been playing at 100% up until the last 3 weeks. And whereas Manchester City have not really got out of second gear, and they've now find themselves joint top and with a big psychological win under their belts. They know that Arsenal got to go to the Etihad later in the season.
Yeah.
They know they're going to get players back. They know that the more time Haaland spends in the team, the easier it will be for players to find him and for him to work out how he gets more involved in those games. So we obviously both, I don't know if I made the prediction. Did I make a prediction that Arsenal win the league? I know you did. 3 weeks ago, you made the prediction that Arsenal will win the league. How do you feel now?
I mean,
it's recorded. It's on the internet.
I should have kept my mouth shut, man. I feel like I've cursed it because Arsenal were flying until we started doing this, and it's all gone downhill for them. I'm going to stick with it at the moment. Yeah, I mean, until Arsenal can't win the league, Arsenal can win the league.
Yeah.
Until it's mathematically impossible for them to do so, Arsenal can win the league, and there's no reason why they can't, apart from their own ineptitude. I do think there was a complete missed trick in not signing a striker in the summer. Not in the summer, in January. But I think even more so, if Trossard doesn't start as a centre forward in the next couple of games before Jesus is back, Arsenal could potentially be having more problems. And I think Trossard is more, I mean, if you're getting Jesus back, Trossard's more of a similar player to Jesus. Get Arsenal playing the same way they were playing at the start of the season, linking it up, not having one guy who is literally just looking to get in behind all the time, actually play through the lines. And then when Jesus comes back, there's not a whole hog switch again. You've got two players who are doing it. But there's obviously something, maybe in training, Eddie bangs everyone in the top corner. I don't know. But in games at the moment, he definitely ain't.
I think Arteta made a big play to retain Nketiah in the summer. He gave him a big contract, and now he feels like he needs to give Nketiah that opportunity to show him that he's worth that money, that he is the second in command to Jesus and is able to step up. He has been stepping up. He stepped up in many games, but along with the rest of the Arsenal team who are tired now, Nketiah shouldn't be tired, but I think they're running out of ideas. And Arteta has to change something. He can't keep playing the same team week in, week out. He needs to trust Vieira. He needs to trust Trossard. He needs to trust Emil Smith-Rowe to come back. And I think Tierney as well. Like, Tierney gives something different at left back.
Yeah.
And if you're playing someone like Nketiah, it almost makes more sense to play Tierney, who's going to get balls in the box.
Yeah.
Whereas
not driving inside. You've got Martinelli driving inside. It means your whole left side with Zinchenko and Martinelli both out there. It means that whole left side becomes very, very narrow and inverted because neither of them are wanting to go on the outside.
Yeah. I think if nothing else, Arteta will have learned a lot about the team the last 3 weeks. And he's a smart guy. His backroom staff will be analysing and trying to understand what they need to change moving forward in order to improve things. And I think if you look at it game by game, you had Everton, who were buoyed by new manager coming in with new ideas, new excitement, new impetus. And so maybe that no one predicted it at the time.
No.
But it can happen. We've seen it often, new managers coming in and having an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Brentford, 9 games unbeaten, taken points off the top 4 all season.
Yeah.
So a draw is not a hugely significant result. It's a significant result, but it's not a terrible result. And then you're playing Man City, who are Man City, right? They're a very good team, and they are Arsenal's main title contenders right at this very moment. So let's see what Arteta takes from this and what he applies to the Villa game tomorrow.
Yes.
It's already tomorrow.
Yeah, it's already, yeah. Saturday at 12:30.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's look then to Aston Villa, obviously Arsenal's next opponents. But as the stand-in Villa fan, let's get some insights from you, Badgie. Tell us a little bit about kind of where Villa are now and where they were hoping to be at the beginning of the season as well.
Well, I mean, money spent the last few years, not so much actually that last summer. I mean, I think the errors made in the market, they were unfortunate with, they brought in, so Steven Gerrard got a lot of flack, and to an extent, rightly so, started the season with Steven Gerrard in charge. Anyone who watched any of Gerrard's games in charge when he was at Rangers, it was good, attacking, pressing football, which could be done because only Rangers and Celtic win in Scotland. So essentially, for most of the season, that's going to work. He came down to Villa and he did not change the setup. He went, this is how we're going to play. And it didn't work because Villa do not dominate games. Because Ashley Young and Matty Cash are not the best two right backs in the Premier League, because Luca Digne is great going forward, but defensively can get caught out. And if you're asking him to be higher up the pitch, he's going to get caught out. Obviously, they paid a lot of money, brought in Diego Carlos, who looked good in his first game of the season and then got injured 10 minutes into the second one and has been out since. There was all the controversy. Diego Carlos is a left-sided centre-back. Steven Gerrard said there was a load of issues with Tyrone Mings. I genuinely don't think there were a load of issues with Tyrone Mings, other than the fact that Steven Gerrard said, I'm bringing in a left-sided centre-back and I'm going to pay shed loads of money. And Tyrone Mings went, well, what about me? So Gerrard then steps in, takes the captaincy off Mings because he didn't want a captain to be someone sat on the bench. He wants his captain in the team. Gives it to John McGinn. How much John McGinn wanted that, I know there was a lot of... I've heard McGinn, since Gerrard's gone, said he felt really awkward because Tyrone was one of the big characters in the dressing room and things like that. And Gerrard is openly saying, you know, Tyrone needs to show the desire to want to play for me and the desire to want to play. And 3 games in, it's all gone out the window because he's suddenly a defender down and he's saying, Tyrone's fit to play now. Yeah, he's shown the desire. Nothing's changed, mate. You've just made something has gone wrong and you're trying to backtrack. And I think there was a distinct arrogance in the way he went about doing things. There was no change in setup, formation. He would pick the same team irrelevant of the result. Danny Ings was Villa's top scorer, but he wouldn't pick him. He'd leave him on the bench. He brought in Philippe Coutinho, who even on loan played well in about 4 games out of the 12 he played.
Yeah.
Paid 17 million for Philippe Coutinho, gave him the biggest contract at Villa, and he's a bit part player. He can't even get in the team. They panicked. They went and got Leander Dendoncker, who is a tidy midfielder. But Villa were looking to move forward, and aspirations of the club were very much, we want to be top 8 this year with a view to moving on to top 6 the season after. And when Gerrard at the helm, it almost looked like it was going to be bottom 3, maybe bottom 5. It was downward. And it's always telling when a manager gets sacked. When Villa had Dean Smith in charge and they got sacked, all of the players came out in support. Really sorry to see you go, Gaffer. Feel like we've let you down. Hope everything moves on. It was all over Twitter. Steven Gerrard got sacked. Nothing. So, absolutely nothing from the players.
So what you're saying, Gerrard came in, tried to stamp his authority, bring his own way of playing football to Villa, which didn't necessarily fit their players at the time. He also tried to make some big statements in terms of removing Mings as captain. didn't pay off, wasn't flexible in terms of looking at the results and what needed to be done to change that. And to be honest, I was quite surprised because I thought, having seen what he did for Rangers, I thought good hire. He's going to demand a lot of respect in the dressing room for everything that he's achieved as a player, but also what he's done at Rangers as well. But I think you're right. I mean, you look at this team. This is a tidy team.
But that's the thing. I think the problem is it's a tidy team. It's a decent team on paper, but Gerrard had a way of doing things that did not fit that group of players. And when he said it was very apparent Gerrard wanted to play narrow with 2 attacking wing backs, and he got rid of all of the wingers. In the summer and last January, he offloaded Trezeguet, El Ghazi. He sent Bernard Traore out on loan. Bertrand Traore out on loan. He sent Jaden Philogene-Bidace out on loan to the Championship, where he'd been kind of under Dean Smith. He'd sort of been teetering on the edge of the first team. I think he had an injury, but he'd been teetering in and around the first team. Louis Barry was someone they were raving about as an attacking forward as opposed to a striker, but he's been out on loan. And fair play, he hasn't done particularly brilliantly while he's been out on loan. But he was sent out. And you kind of get into the point where he made a big shout about Cameron Archer, a young striker, and he was like, do you know what? We're not going to let him go. We want him here. We want him here. And then never picked him. Barely ever put him on the bench. And he's now out on loan at Middlesbrough. And Middlesbrough are absolutely stonking through the Championship. And I think they've won 12 of their last 16. Sat third in the table. Archer's been looking good. Got a couple of goals the other night against Sheffield United. So there is a group of players. It did not work. There was no love lost when Gerrard was gone. I think he also fell victim of. There was a lot of talk about Gerrard being almost the front man, but the coaching team behind him with the nucleus of it. And the main man of that was Mick Beale. Mick Beale in the summer got offered the job as QPR boss, went to QPR, done really well to such an extent that QPR haven't won in 10 since he left.
Okay.
But he got the job in the summer and he's already gone because Rangers asked him. And he went, yeah, all right, see you later. So there's a guy with absolutely no scruples, all about Mick Beale. He said, I'm really into the project at QPR until someone else comes in. If that's the sort of people you're going to surround yourself with, you're always on to a fail.
You know what this reminds me of, though? We were talking the other week about Everton. They also had a tidy team, but they hadn't found a style of play that suited those players.
Yeah.
And then Sean Dyche comes in and kind of does a number on Arsenal.
Yep.
You know what also reminds me of, though? Arteta coming in, having a very particular style of play, not having the players to deal with it, having a very tough 2 years. And then over those 2 years, he's managed to build a team that fit to the style of play that he wanted to implement. Gerrard and Lampard didn't have the time that Arteta had been given at Arsenal. Do you think if they've given that time, they've both been given that time, and Gerrard, let's focus on him right now because we're talking about Villa. If he was given 2.5 years, do you think he could have turned Villa into the Rangers of, let's not say the Rangers, but do you think they would have been a lot more competitive if he had been able to bring in the players?
Yeah, because they would have been in the Championship. I genuinely think the way he was doing it and the adamantness of no change and no flexibility within it, there was only one way that Villa were going. And I think that's what was seen. And I think there's a massive difference in Steven Gerrard and Mikel Arteta. Arteta had done his managerial apprenticeship. He spent 2-3 years assistant manager at Pep. He's working with the best players. He's working under arguably one of the best managers in world football. He's taking all of that experience on. He played under Wenger for a number of years. Gerrard, his coaching career was youth team football at Liverpool and then gets the Rangers gig. If you go to Scotland and you get the job of Rangers or Celtic and you don't finish in the top two, you're awful. He finished in the top two. He didn't need to coach that team. In fact, it turns out he probably wasn't really coaching that team. He was almost a figurehead. He would have put his implementation on, this is what I want, but his coaching team done it, and he didn't backfill it. And it's kind of it made a rod for his own back. Lampard, I feel, is a little bit different. I mean, he went to Derby, he done his stuff, he took that step down, went to Derby, done quite well. I mean, let's be set. In fact, we've all seen the hassle and trouble that Derby have been in the last couple of years. So he done all right. He did call on favours from Chelsea, brought in a young Mason Mount. He had a young Fikayo Tomori there. And they done really well for him. He then got the job at Chelsea when they had a transfer embargo because nobody wanted to go in there when they weren't allowed to spend money. And he got, he built the Premier League campaign or top level campaign for Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, and a couple of others have come through and were key players who looked as though they could have been on their way out before he got there. So he done well. And the Everton job is one of those, if you are managing, if you play at the top level and then you manage the top teams, irrelevant of where they are. Derby were one of the top teams in the Championship. Rangers, one of the two teams in Scotland. If you then drop down to a team that's not at that level and you don't have the players at the level of the people around the league that you're playing in, that's what is the test of a manager. Roy Keane failed miserably when that was the case. He'd do brilliantly in the Championship with a team that shouldn't be in the Championship. As soon as he got in the Prem, all went wrong. Roy Keane didn't do it well. Roy Keane ends up being assistant manager to people and a pundit. Gary Neville went to Valencia, went hideous, never touched management again. Assistant manager to Sven, I think, not Sven, or was it? No, it wasn't Sven. Who was the assistant manager to? Someone. Maybe Roy Hodgson. But assistant manager for England for a period of time. And went, I don't want the proper job, and left the gig.
There's a bit of a theme, isn't there, with that generation of football player?
Yeah. But also they've worked with very good managers and they have a very strong idea of what they want and how they want the game to be played. And if they don't have the players to do it, you're then going out for people, and you end up with people like Coutinho coming in who, do you know what? He was brilliant playing with me. Yeah, 5 years ago, mate. He hasn't performed for about 4 years. But you've just given him a massive contract. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
Coutinho doesn't care. And I mean, Arsenal were interested in wanting to bring Coutinho in, and he decided he wanted to go to Villa because it was Steven Gerrard. What a bullet dodged by Arsenal. Because he'd be sat on your bench, taking a load of cash, probably not really wanting to come on huge amount.
Yeah.
And but it changed. Unai Emery comes in. Emery comes in. Well, actually, first off, I can't remember the guy's name now. But he gets the gig for 2 games. First game, win 4-0. Second game, lose 4-0. Well done, son. Win 1, lose 1. 0 goal difference. Off your top. Emery comes in and changes the setup. Very much a case of he's got a clear identification of what he wants. Bizarrely, and I found this really weird, Reading had as many players representing them at the World Cup as Villa did.
Okay.
Now, if you're a Premier League team and you've only got 3 players from your squad going to a World Cup consisting of 32 teams, either your international players are not great, or your players are not great, or the teams they represent are awful, which then kind of has an effect on how good your players are. So Emery basically came in and said, these are the players who have been here for the whole time while the World Cup's been on. This is who I'm working with. These guys have been here for 4 weeks. They know what I want. And he's not really moved from that. The only person who really has come back into that team that was at the World Cup was Emi Martinez. Ashley Young has kept his place. Matty Cash has not got back into the team. And I'm just trying to think who the other one that went was.
Did Buendia go?
No. I can't even remember who the other player that went was. Dendoncker went with Belgium.
Okay.
Doesn't get into the team. Nowhere near the team. So he's worked with those players because they know what he wants. Others, there's now slight tweaks. People are getting little bits of run-outs here and there. But he knows what he wants, and he's building a team that works around what he wants. But he's not afraid to make tweaks and changes. And like you were saying earlier, it's not massive changes, but it's a very subtle changes. So, for example, Villa played, so I'm just bringing it up in front of me, played against Leicester, got beat 4-2. We're in the game, just made it 3 mistakes at the back because he says, I want us to play out from the back. Again, was manager of Arsenal, was manager of Sevilla, always doing well, high up the end of the table. Villarreal, same. Villa maybe don't quite have the players to do that, but he wants the structure to be that. And if they can't, and if the defenders can't do that, he'll go, right, well, we need to improve the defenders. Because the midfielders drop in and pick the ball up. Douglas Luiz does that, Boubacar Kamara does it. So that's what he wants from him. But the format of the setup against Leicester was 4-4-2. He doesn't really play with the winger. He plays with wide midfielders. The nearest to a winger really is Emi Buendia, but Buendia is not going down the line, beating 3 people and whipping a crossing. He's stepping inside. 2 defensive midfielders, another centre midfielder on the other side who it becomes very inverted and quite narrow, but 2 up front. The week after the loss, they then play against, who did they play the week after? After Leicester, they played,
You need a hand.
Not find it. Yeah, I can't see it for the love of the money. There it is, Man City. So they played Man City the week after, lost 3-1, expected. But he's gone into that, and there has been slight changes. Nothing major, but it's Tyrone Mings comes out, Callum Chambers comes in, makes some hideous mistakes, comes out. But he makes those changes. So to get back into the game, he took off Luca Digne, who wasn't performing. He took off Buendia. He took off Leon Bailey. He makes those changes, and he makes them relatively early. 60 minutes, he made 3 changes. You've got other people not making changes 70, 75 minutes. I've got faith in the people who are on the pitch. But he basically made all 5 changes by 76 minutes. To try and get Villa back into the game. He's changed half his team, and there's 15 minutes left to try and get something out of it. And it's that not forward thinking, but it's showing the fans that, look, I've got a desire here to go and get something from this game. He doesn't drastically change the setup. So to give an example, he takes off Ashley Young and Jacob Ramsey at 76 minutes and brings on Matty Cash and Coutinho. So Coutinho will just go wide midfield. Matty Cash goes to right back. At 60 minutes, he takes off Digne, Buendia and Bailey, and he brings on McGinn, Moreno and Duran. like for like, essentially, but just different attributes.
So it's not a system change. It's just a player change who might bring something slightly different to the game, might be able to impact it in a different way.
Yeah, this person's struggling today. They're not working as well defensively as we want. So let's actually bring on someone who's more defensive minded and give something else in front of them. And it's kind of, so it's not wholesale changes, but it's subtle changes. And they're what you didn't see with Gerrard. If there wasn't a like-for-like option on the bench, Gerrard didn't make a change.
Okay. And so like the form did change quite quickly and dramatically, didn't it? Moving from Gerrard to Emery. Yep. How would you sum up kind of the Emery's tenure so far in terms of results versus expectation? Is he overachieving with the players, or is he kind of where you would expect them to be in terms of the results that they're getting right now?
I would say they're probably about where they should be. Sat 11th in the table as it stands. They're 10 points clear of the bottom three, 10 points off fifth place, essentially 11 points off fifth place, but with a game in hand on Spurs. So they're sat slap bang in the middle. If Villa's aim this season has got to be top 10.
Okay.
If they finish any lower than 11th, then it's a backward step, because I think they finished 14th last season. But they would allude to the fact that Dean Smith had a poor start. Steven Gerrard came in. They had that manager bounce. The difference is the players now look like they want to play for Emery. They didn't look like they wanted to play for Gerrard. It looked as though players had lost interest. And I'm not talking just before he got sacked. From the start of the season. So many noses put out of joint. Players could not understand what he was wanting them to do, not from a tactical perspective, or not wanting them to do, but what he was wanting from them. Sorry. So the whole Tyrone Mings situation, he's replaced Mings. He then strips Mings of the captaincy. And there's not really much coming out about it apart from him moaning about Tyrone Mings. Yet no other manager at Villa had any issue with Tyrone Mings. And there's various things like that. Whereas Emery's come in, it seems as though he's put an arm around players, said, look, I want you to be the best version of you. And players have responded to it.
Well, this is going to be my question, because one of the reasons it's believed that he failed at Arsenal is because of his language skills.
Yeah.
Has he developed his English language in the time since leaving Arsenal, or does he have an assistant or a team with him that can communicate his ideas?
I don't think you had, when he done interviews at Arsenal at the start, yes, it was not great. And it became a meme, the whole good evening. It became a meme. But I don't think in the end it was a major issue at Arsenal. I think part of the problem was at Arsenal was he'd become a meme. Basically, Arsenal wanted to be somewhere in a position. He was getting, it wasn't hideous finishes under Emery. He's still finishing top 4, I think. But I think at that point in time, Arsenal wanted to progress and they couldn't see where the progression was coming from Emery. So let's go change of tact. And then for 2 years, Arsenal finished lower than that. There were question marks, but it was, you know what, believe in it. And the one thing Arsenal have done is actually keep a manager. Emery was there for 2.5, 3 years, I think. Arteta, 3 years. They don't pull someone in and go, well, this isn't working. But then equally, Arsenal have spent however many years with top 4 as being their main aspiration. And that's about it. So long as you tick that box, people were happy. As soon as you didn't tick the box, that's when people started questioning. And I do think there would have been that element of issue with the language stuff to start with Emery. I don't think it's necessarily progressed significantly because he went straight back to Spain, and then has come to Villa from there. So,
are Villa fans happy with him?
Oh God, yeah. I don't. Yeah. Villa fans are relatively fickle. Villa fans do have not a superiority complex, but Villa fans are very much, we are a big club. And how you define big club is open to interpretation. And obviously, if you're defining yourself as a big club, the interpretation is we've won the Champions League, we've won the league 7 times, we've won the FA Cup 7 times. None of those things have happened for 40 years and beyond. But they've happened. So we're a big club, big stadium, decent infrastructure. There's money now behind it, but there's an expectation on from Villa fans on Villa, and even that relegation to the Championship hasn't tempered those expectations when Villa have been back in the Prem. It is very much, well, we should be in the top. We should be challenging for the European football. There's established teams there that are doing it. So, yes, I think they're happy. I think Villa fans are significantly more happy with Unai Emery than they were with Steven Gerrard after probably about 8 games of Gerrard's reign, because you could see that Villa were grinding results as opposed to playing decent football.
Yeah. I think just looking at the stats here, Villa struggle for goals, let's say.
Yep.
It's still, I think it's still the case even under Emery, right?
They don't have any strikers, really. I mean, yeah. Danny Ings was the only striker. Danny Ings is a very specific type of striker. I mean, to be fair, for 15 million quid, Arsenal should have been snapping up Danny Ings in the January window. For 15 million quid, that's cheap. We were talking about the transfer window a couple of weeks ago and saying you don't get those bargains. I would say, yes, he's 30, but the guy knows how to score goals. And worst case scenario, he's probably going to help Eddie Nketiah gain a bit of composure. Man, just chill. And it would have been good because he is more of that sort of striker. He can link play. He does get involved in the game more than Nketiah. He's not a Jesus, but he's kind of a bit of a mid between the two of them. But he would have scored goals. He probably would have won the game against Brentford. He would have got at least he probably would have got at least 1 goal against Man City with the chances that created. But Villa don't play that sort of style of football. And Emery openly said, we don't play the football that gets the best out of him. It doesn't make him a bad player. It just means that he won't be starting for us and he wants to be starting games, which is why he went. Villa didn't want to sell him. They just knew they couldn't really justify keeping him. And they've gone. Yeah. And then your only real striker is Ollie Watkins, who's not prolific. I think he scored 14 goals his first season in the Prem. Last season, he got 7. But to be fair, last season, I think he was still top scorer with 7. And I think this season, he's maybe got 6 or 7. But they spent a lot of money on Jean Duran, who is the 19-year-old Colombian who's come from the MLS, who looks very good in the short cameos he's had. But he won't be starting games. The expectation level's far too high. But it's why they bought back Bertrand Traore and cancelled his loan at Fenerbahce and bought him back because he can play out wide. He can play out wide, but he can also play up front. They've got Leon Bailey. So then what they've got is 3-4 with Duran, very quick forwards who will press.
Okay.
They may not be prolific, but they will create opportunities. And the more opportunities you get, no matter how prolific you are, the more chances there are of you scoring.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at kind of recent results here, and Villa probably averaging a goal on the occasion, 2 goals a game.
Yep.
So it really depends on how many they're conceding. And I guess most recently, as you say, they lost 4-2 against Leicester, a resurgent Leicester. They lost 3-1 against against City, which is unsurprising because it was at the Etihad. But aside from that, kind of conceding maybe a goal. They beat Southampton, right, 1-0.
Beat Southampton 1-0, beat Spurs 2-0, drew with Wolves 1-1, and beat Leeds 2-1 in the league. And then they put out a reserve team against Stevenage and lost 2-1.
So they're probably not going to keep a clean sheet against Arsenal.
In Ketcher plays, and he played like he did against Man City, they might do.
I'm tempted fate here, aren't I? I'm just by saying that.
Yeah, and what I'm going to try and swing the tide and say, do you know what? It's at Villa. I think Villa will win.
Well, let's not get into predictions yet. Jesus. But
yes.
Head-to-heads recently, I think it's 50-50. If you look back at the last 6 games, Villa have won 3 of 6.
Yeah.
Most recently, I can see here 2-1 Arsenal win at the Emirates and 1-0 for Arsenal away at Villa Park. But the 2 games prior, actually, Arsenal also won the game before that. But then there were 2 in a row, which Villa actually managed to get. No, 3 in a row, if you do the maths. Villa managed to get the win. So Villa have not had it terribly against Arsenal in the last three seasons.
No. It's going to be an awkward one because there is a big clamour at the moment for the young Colombian Duran to start the game. There's a lot of publicity going around in Birmingham, in the Birmingham Post, the Birmingham Mail, and on various different talks things over there about him getting into that team and starting, because Leon Bailey has been playing up top, but the problem with Leon Bailey is he flatters to deceive. He's either unbelievable or completely anonymous. There is no in between whatsoever. And when I say anonymous, that's worse, because at least Nketiah's getting in the positions. So he could play. So Nketiah could play badly and miss chances, but he's getting in the positions. And if he keeps doing it, a goal will happen. He can't miss consistently forever. Leon Bailey just vanishes out of the game. He doesn't get into chances. He doesn't get on the ball. When he does get the ball, he's nowhere near goal. He loses it. But then other games, he's unplayable because he's so quick. His feet are so good. But Duran offers something a bit different. He's bigger. He's more physical. Still very quick, young and raw. He could cause Arsenal some problems if he does start. Ollie Watkins always causes teams like Arsenal problems because he presses and he's relentless.
Yeah.
But Villa at the moment, the way that Villa is setting up very much reminds me of Arsenal early day. Well, not early days, but the early 2000s under Wenger. Without the high level quality of a Thierry Henry and a Bergkamp. But across the rest of the team, I think, when they've got Diego Carlos back, they've got arguably one of the best keepers in the Premier League. You've got Alisson, Edison, and then I think Martinez is probably the next in line. Him, Ramsdale, Pickford, all probably much of a much. De Gea maybe just behind that. But yeah, I think when you look at that, he's definitely right up there. Diego Carlos coming back to fitness, but Tyrone Mings is just your big, win the ball in the air, got a bit of pace, does the job. The same with Konsa does the same. I'm hoping they don't start Digne. I hope they start Moreno. Because Digne's just looked really off it. And I'm a Luca Digne fan. I think he's a very good player, but he's just been really off it for the last 5, 6, 7 games. you don't make changes in the fullback positions unless players are fullback defensively. You don't make changes unless a player's being found out, and he's coming off in most games. But why I say it's like Arsenal, it's two relatively narrow, inverted wide midfielders, your Ljungberg, your Perez, who, yes, get up the flank, but they're not getting up the flank to cross the ball. They're getting up and coming inside. And that's what they want from Buendia. That's what they want from Jacob Ramsey and John McGinn when they're in. And they're playing with those two holding pivots, your Vieira, your Petit, in Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz. And the way that they're trying to play and sort of get that ball moving, once that's fully ingrained, Villa get a decent striker and they then become very dangerous. At the moment, they haven't got that. Duran could prove to be it, but it's a big ask for a 19-year-old who's only played in the Colombian First Division for a season and then the MLS for a season.
How many times have we seen it, though? A raw player coming in and making a huge impact. It might be that impact only happens for 4 or 5 games, and then they need that time to recalibrate and come out of the team and learn the trade. But it can happen. And as you say,
go on. Sorry, carry on.
It sounds like all they need is someone to be in the right place at the right time. Just put those finishing touches on the plays that are coming through.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where if the problem they've got is if he comes in and he does that for 5-6 games, they won't be able to take him out because they have no one else.
Well, it's like Nketiah Arsenal right now.
Yeah, but Arsenal have got Trossard they could put in there. I mean, Villa they're playing Leon Bailey there. They could play Bertrand Traore there. But as I said, neither of them are forwards. They're wingers you're asking to play through the middle. Trossard was playing up front for Brighton, so it's not an unknown really for him. But I think it's Villa fans would start to question Emery if he said he's only 19, I'm taking him out to give him a rest. They'd be like, well, hold on, he's on fire. What the hell are you playing at? It's a dangerous game, and that's why I think he's easing him in. But as I say, there's the clamour for him to be started already. From what people have seen and what he's shown so far, he looks dangerous. I think he hit the bar in his cameo appearance last week against City, right at the very end of the game. So the signs are good, but for Villa to move to the next level, they need a proper goal scorer.
So in terms of goals at the moment, you've got Ollie Watkins on 6. You've got Danny Ings was on 6 by the looks of this, but he's gone out. Then you got Leon Bailey 4, Buendia with 3. So as you say, you're relying. You don't have like significant goal scorers here.
Nope.
Ollie Watkins isn't a natural. Well, he's the only natural striker you got, but he's not a natural goal scorer, let's say.
Nope.
He's someone who's going to lead from the front, press a lot, win those balls back, and hopefully tee someone else up to apply the finish. But he's got no strike partner in there. So you see that as a potential card that Emery might play in terms of bringing in, what's his name? Sorry?
Duran.
Duran.
Yes.
Duran. Okay. I'm just looking at the team news as well. So Carlos is definitely out, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. He's back in training apparently, but yes.
Okay. Then from what I see here, Tyrone Mings is being assessed. He might be back.
Yeah.
And the other one, Traore, I think, is the other one who's being assessed and might also come back in.
Yeah.
Do you see, if those two players are fit, do you see them potentially starting, or are they likely to be on the bench?
if Tyrone Mings is fit, he has to start because Callum Chambers is awful. He looked all right when he was playing when he played a couple of times last season for Villa under Gerrard. He looked all right, but Callum Chambers, play him in a 3-man centre, play him as a centre back in a 3-man, probably be all right. Play him at right back or even as the holding midfielder, he's all right. He's been out of the game, not playing matches for so long that to bring him back, it just doesn't work. I'd rather see Leandro Dendoncker play at centre back or drop Boubacar Kamara to centre back. And Kamara has been absolutely quality in midfield. If he will stay at Villa this season and next season, if Villa aren't challenging for Europe, he'll be gone to a big club for a lot of money. But I'd rather see one of those guys playing at centre back than Callum Chambers. Because I think, as I said a minute ago, if Nketiah keeps getting chances, he will score in the end. And Callum Chambers will just keep giving him the ball. Chambers will forget he's playing for Villa. He'll think he's re-signed for Arsenal. Run off celebrating. Got an assist, boss.
It's sad. Arsenal have actually kind of ruined quite a lot of young English players' careers. And maybe there was just a lot of expectation put on them and they weren't that good in the first place. But especially the ones signed from Southampton. But anyway, that's another conversation. I think Arsenal's team news, Thomas Partey is unsure. I'm looking at a kind of an interview with Arteta right now. Muscle discomfort, have to see how he is. Again, as we talked about, Jorginho played well in his place against City, probably one of the players that did come out looking quite good. But Smith Rowe will be in the squad. Jesus will be out, so not yet back. So I think no big surprises there. I don't think there's any kind of real talking points in terms of players out and players in for Arsenal either. Who do you expect to be Villa's key man against Arsenal?
Probably Emi Martinez, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And if not Emi Martinez, Unai Emery. Emery's not going to want to lose against Arsenal. Martinez is not going to want to lose against Arsenal.
Chambers is going to want to lose against
Chambers ain't going to have any option to influence it, even if he's on the pitch. I think that those two, Martinez is going to be key. Arsenal are going to dominate the ball, which then means Douglas Luiz and Boubacar Kamara will be pretty influential in that midfield to try and stop that happening. I would imagine John McGinn will probably come into the team. I know they've got their they have got Callum Chambers listed as the possible, don't they? I would imagine I wouldn't be surprised if Buendia goes up front instead of Bailey, so they can link that play, move the ball, keep it there, almost as a number 10 instead of being an out and out striker. Watkins just to press everything, with McGinn coming into the midfield just to give that additional energy. Another centre midfielder who's going to drive, hassle, harry. He'll provide probably more support defensively as well. I think Moreno will probably replace Digne based on Digne's recent performances. And is Ashley Young at 37 years old going to be able to do it again? He's been so good this season, but I think there's a point in time where they've got to look at that and say, do you know what? Actually, just let's take him out, give him a rest, put Matty Cash back in. Because from Young's point of view as well, if you've got him on the bench, you can bring him on anywhere, pretty much.
Very
Matty
versatile.
Cash is coming on at right midfield or right back. And then you're trying to shoehorn Young halfway for a game somewhere else if you're not taking him off. So maybe just give him that rest. Key man's going to be Martinez. I think he's going to be. Well, I think he's going to be worked based on the Man City game. He might not be. Just catching the ball from the ball boy as he throws it back on a regular basis. But yeah, I genuinely I think he's going to be the main man.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Arteta definitely has to change something. I've been saying it for the last 3 weeks that something needs to change up front. Like we've seen it from the stats earlier. I don't have it up anymore, but Arsenal have picked the same team week in, week out. They've made the fewest changes in the lineup of any of the Premier League teams, and we've started to see them tire. Trossard needs to start, whether he starts in place of Martinelli or Nketiah. I think it's an interesting argument. He could start in either of those places. Jorginho, you might as well keep him in there if Partey is a doubt. He's probably not going to be fully fit.
Yeah.
And then do you keep Tommy at right back in order to give him a bit more confidence? And do you bring Tierney in at left back as someone who's going to provide a bit more width and perhaps help Martinelli out in terms of being a player who's going to take one of the, because Martinelli and Saka often get picked up by two players. If you play Tierney in, who's going to go on the overlap, you might pull one of those players away and give Martinelli some space to actually make an impact, because he's not really had an impact on games recently. So Arteta needs to make some changes, and if he doesn't, then I think it's a big mistake. They might still win if he doesn't, but I think he needs to start bringing in some fresh legs, some fresh impetus, even if it's just for kind of 1 or 2 games. Give some players a rest. You can't drop Odegaard, you can't drop Saka, I'm afraid. You can drop Xhaka. I think he needs a break. Also, maybe
there's no replacement for him now, is there really? That's the problem. By letting Sambi Lokonga go,
Smith Rowe, but I don't think he'll be fit. Like Xhaka's playing a very box-to-box role at the moment, and I don't know. Maybe he tries something slightly.
Moves Zinchenko into midfield.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but then equally, I think looking at that, Zinchenko at left back, we know he moves into the midfield position, but not as a left midfielder, more as a left centre midfielder. And actually, I don't think he will change that based on the fact that Villa will be very narrow, because Jacob Ramsey is not going to be playing as a right winger. Jacob Ramsey will be pushing inside and become narrow. Zinchenko will move in to provide that support and cover. Ben White, I mean, Tomiyasu had a mare. Well, he didn't know. Did he have a mare? He made a couple of mistakes. He didn't have necessarily a mare. But he was unceremoniously hauled off at about 83 minutes for Ben White against City. But he's playing again. He was up against Jack Grealish, who was on it.
Yeah.
And looks good and works and hassles and harries. Tomiyasu's not going to, and is actually strong. Tomiyasu's not going to have that issue against Buendia. So you could afford to keep him in there. And again, as I said earlier, part of the problem is he gets drawn across a lot. Well, if Villa are going to be playing narrow, being drawn across isn't a major issue, because there's not going to be anyone going on the outside.
Well, this is a thing. Do you then try and win the midfield battle, or do you try and take advantage of potentially the space that's on the wings? I think there's a lot of decisions to be made. Yeah. I would be pretty disappointed if Arteta doesn't make at least 2 changes to the usual lineup. I mean, I'm not talking about bringing White and Partey back in, because that would just be your standard. Then I'm talking.
Yeah.
I'm talking Tierney, or I don't think Smith Rowe is going to be fit, but maybe Vieira could play that Xhaka role. Slightly different player, but maybe he can come in there. Trossard, I think, has to start in one of those two positions, either on the left or in the middle.
Yeah.
Let's go on to some... like, there's no point in us doing these predictions anymore, but let's go on to some score predictions. What do you reckon?
Villa to win 2-1, just because based on that, Arsenal will probably win the game.
Yeah, go on, do it. No, but to be fair, when we had Jack on as the Brentford fan, he got the result right. So
he did. Oh, right. Oh, so now I'm not. So don't go with Villa.
Now you're the Villa fan. It's like you don't know what's coming, do you? It's not like we've done this before.
No,
every time you take.
Yeah, no, but I think it's because of the recent results for Arsenal.
Yeah,
as you say, something has to change, and the only change I would make from the Man City game for Arsenal would be Nketiah out and Trossard going into that position. But I think he'll make more. I genuinely think he may go and make a couple of additional changes this time, because it is 4 without a win and the pressure's now on. I think it's going to be 1-1. I genuinely think it will be 1-1. I think Villa will score. Ollie Watkins will score a really scruffy. He'll press the ball and it'll come off his left bum cheek and loop over Ramsdale and into the top corner, because that's the only way I feel where Ollie Watkins is going to bag a proper goal. I know he scored against Leicester, but yeah, I think it'll be 1-1. I think Watkins will probably get a goal. I'd love to see it be that Jean Duran, if he starts, if he gets on the pitch. I'd love to see him pick up a goal early in his Villa career, just to give him that kind of impetus to move forward. And for Arsenal, do you know what I can see? I can see Arsenal getting a goal via a penalty. I can see some sort of calamity at the back, and Saka will bag a pen. That said, if Callum Chambers starts at centre back, Arsenal to win 3-1.
Okay, so it's dependent on Chambers. Come on, Chambers.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, to be honest, I haven't thought about my prediction either. And
come on, Dan. We do this every week. It's not like you don't know what's coming.
So, I mean, my predictions have been completely awful the last 3 weeks anyway, but I have to go an Arsenal win, because it's just inconceivable that they don't get 3 points this weekend. I think Villa, I think it's a really good game for Arsenal, actually, Villa. Because mid-table, kind of lost 2 on the bounce, conceded 7 goals in those 2 games. Arsenal need to make changes. I think Trossard will score.
Yeah.
I think Saka will score. And I don't think Arsenal are going to keep a clean sheet. I can't see it at the moment. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Arsenal win. And I don't know who's going to get one for. Callum Chambers is going to get one for. No. Maybe if Mings is back, maybe he'll get one. We've seen how weak Arsenal are in terms of crosses and corners recently. That is they're probably their biggest weakness. Certainly recently, I think they've been fairly good at the beginning of the season. Saliba and Gabriel pretty strong there, but ultimately something's gone wrong and they are conceding those types of goals. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Arsenal win. And
obviously, that does remind me, at the start of the season, Douglas Luiz did score directly from a corner. Yeah.
From a corner, yeah, for sure. That was right after Arsenal tried to sign him on the last day of the season. And I think the next game, was it the next game?
Yeah, it was a week after, I think. Oh, well, no, it was the day. It was the game and then the transfer window. I think it was the date midweek before the transfer window.
That was a freaking sucker punch.
Because he tried to do it straight after as well, almost scored straight after doing the same thing.
Do you want to know what the Football Manager simulation for the season, what the result was?
It's going to be a romping. 1-1. Whoa, hold on. And Saka scoring. I like that. Although Diego Carlos scored.
Let me show you like this.
Luca Digne injured. That doesn't surprise me. Matty Cash won't start. They did go. They've got, like I said, Boubacar Kamara. I'd rather see Kamara or Dendoncker playing centre back than I would Callum Chambers. Buendia, Ramsey, McGinn.
These teams are all over the place. I don't know what Football Manager's thinking here, but predicting the same result as you.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, it could happen. Part of me wants it to happen. Part of me doesn't. Part of me wants Arsenal to sort themselves out, because even if Man City do go on and win the league, I don't want it to be because Arsenal just peter out.
Yeah, that would be really sucky.
Yeah,
I'm already starting to, it took me a good 2 days to recover my composure and pick myself up after that City game, because it honestly felt like, this is how it's gonna happen, is it? But yeah, I think I hope Arsenal are going to bounce back. What time are we now? We're kind of nearly 9 o'clock the night before, so we're going to find out very soon. It's another early kickoff for Arsenal, something that Arteta is unhappy about because of the Wednesday game. But another reason he should make some changes. But yeah, let's finish up there then. If you have stayed this long, then make sure you like and leave a comment. Let us know what you think the result is going to be and who's going to get the goals. But I'm going to let Badgie go back to his Friday night, spend some time with his little one. I'm going to edit this and get it out as soon as possible. And we'll catch you next week. What's happening next week? Who even looks this far ahead?
Next week, Arsenal are playing. Oh, Villa play Everton. That's what I've got up in front of me at the moment. Arsenal play Leicester away.
Okay.
And it's a 3 o'clock kickoff.
Alrighty. So we'll be back for Leicester. Hopefully Arsenal are back clear at the top of the table. We will see. Thank you, Badgie. Hoping Chambers starts, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Cheers, guys.
Peace out. Make good choices. Bye.